Hi there tea people, it's Nick again from Modality Club, and I hope by now you've all got your packages and are enjoying your tea. I wanted to do this video to introduce you to a different style of tea brewing called Gong Fu Brewing. This is something I'm really into. I think it's a really great way to brew tea, maybe the best way to brew tea. Certainly it's quite sophisticated, it's a bit more involved, and it's quite a traditional way that Chinese people might brew, and you'll have seen it in a form through if you've seen images of a Chinese tea ceremony. It's that kind of vibe, but it doesn't have to have all the sense of I guess the kind of Japanese tea ceremony is often very kind of meditative and very silent. It doesn't have to be that, it can be quite informal really. It's quite a good way to have tea with friends, and I would argue it's the way you'll get the most out of your really high quality loose leaf tea that we'll be enjoying in the Modality Club. Now, it's not kind of how I brew day to day at work. It's a bit complicated. There was a time actually when I did used to bring my Gaiwan to work and do this, but I've kind of mostly stopped doing that now. There's not enough time in the day. But if, like now, I'm on holiday, I'm just chilling out, then a bit more time to spend drinking tea, then it's definitely what I do, and what I do at the weekends and on days off. So before I get any further, I'm just going to actually preheat my my teaware. Very important step. So very briefly, Gong Fu Brewing, or it's the same etymological root as Kung Fu, which, in case your Chinese is as rusty as mine, means skillful in Chinese, so you can see kind of where that vibe is going with the martial arts, but also in terms of our tea brewing today, this is a more skillful way to brew tea. So, and just for comparison, so the way of brewing tea that we've talked about so far is also called Western brewing, where you'll use a tea brewing vessel a bit like this, or just a stubby little teapot, and you want a tea brewing vessel big enough for 300 mils for a single mug of tea, and you put 2 heaped teaspoons or about 3 grams of tea in that, brew it for 2 or 3 minutes, drain, strain, drink, and then re-steep once or twice. That's probably about all you're going to get off most teas and brewed that Western style. And another kind of commonly practiced way of brewing tea in China is literally to have your flask or your mug, drop some loose leaf tea into that, pour your boiling water into it, and let that slowly infuse as you go about your daily business, and then just sip from it and kind of use your lips and your teeth to kind of strain the tea leaves, stop them getting into your mouth, and then when you've got to the bottom, just refill and enjoy through the day. So that's apparently what, if you ever kind of take a taxi in China, you'll see taxi drivers with their flask of green tea like that. So that's sometimes in kind of Western facing tea blogging called grandpa style, because of a prominent bloggers remembers that's how his granddad back in Shanghai always used to brew his tea. But so we're not doing grandpa, we're not doing Western style today, we're doing Gong Fu style brewing, and I've got some different kit that you need I use to brew Gong Fu style. Now, when would you brew Gong Fu style? Well, today we're going to brew a black tea Gong Fu style, and I've got some black teas which I think I get the most of brewed this way, although I brew a lot of black tea kind of Western style day to day. But if you've got a really floral aromatic oolong tea, then it's good to brew it Gong Fu to really make the most of the tea. I'm really into my pu'er aged fermented teas, and you've probably heard me trying to drop those words in some of the videos. Then you kind of need to brew them Gong Fu style, because you'll just get something really kind of acrid and bitter and astringent if you're trying to brew it Western style most of the time. And but kind of aged white teas, green teas, other white teas, all styles of tea you can brew Gong Fu. It always works. I brought my kit here, and people kind of keep on joking that the scales that I bring to work and these kind of funny little wrappers are all slightly suspicious, but I promise you it's all legitimate and above board. So I've measured out, I've actually kind of finished this packet. So this packet is so what we're drinking today is Bailu Luo Chun, which is a particular area in Yunnan province in South China, as I keep saying, the birthplace of tea and where some really interesting black teas come from. And it looks like this. Is about 5.5 grams. This is the last of my sample. I'm just going to try and focus in on that for you. Hopefully you can see those really fabulous kind of tightly curled buds of tea. So it's not the leaf, it's the buds that have been picked before the leaves have really come out in the spring. So kind of really a very delicate and quite a sweet kind of style of black tea and bud tea. Maybe not such complexity as sort of kind of more leaf black teas, but really nice. So I've got that. I've preheated my water. I need a vessel to strain this into. So I'll just pour this into here for now. And so now let's get brewing. So there you go, 5.5 grams of tea going in. This is 150 millilitres, this Gaiwan. So Gaiwan is literally just the Chinese for lidded cup. It's really that simple. This technology, this way of brewing tea has been around for hundreds, if I don't know, maybe thousands of years. So the kind of earliest records of tea brewing goes back about 2,000 years, but there's a suggestion maybe people were brewing tea for medicinal purposes another 1,000 years before that. And it's really very simple. You just take the lid and angle it. I've got my tea strainer, and you pour. So what I'm doing here is this first infusion. I'm now going to do something which I used to feel is pretty sacrilegious. I've been banging on about the high quality whole leaf, loose leaf tea that we're drinking. I'm just going to pour this away. We ain't drinking that today, kids. And the reason is that while it looks quite a good colour, that actually when the tea leaves are still quite dry, they're still opening up, then actually you get quite a thin flavour profile to your tea. You don't really get the best out of the tea. So this tea's going to go for a number of steeps, so we don't need to drink that wash, the rinse. So just to reiterate, the idea is we've got lots of leaf, a small tea vessel, and we're going to brew short brew times several times. And so while I said with Western style brewing, maybe we will, you could brew that 3 times for some teas if you're lucky. So Gong Fu style, we could easily go 8 brews. Some oolongs and pu'er teas, you could go 10, 15 brews. So it's a style of tea brewing where you get real longevity to your tea session, which if you've got time like I have on holiday is great. In the middle of a busy work day, not so much. So we're going to get on with the first steep then. So you can see I'm making a bit of a mess, I'm afraid, and that's kind of fairly typical really. Gong Fu Brewing is a little messy, and that's why you might have seen my bamboo Chinese kind of tea tray. Lots of people would use those to try and kind of clear up that mess. So again, we're kind of just brewing for 10 or 15 seconds really, and if you're starting out doing this, I really would encourage you to use a timer, because you won't know kind of how to do it again if you got it right. So it's very helpful just to kind of work out, okay, well that was 5 seconds, then 10 seconds, then 15 seconds. Well, what worked? What will I want to do again? And then the more you do it, then I now have been brewing this way for maybe 3 or 4 years. You kind of start to get a feel for it. It depends on the tea, and arguably it's worth re-brewing the same tea a couple of times to get used to how it's going to respond Gong Fu style. So I've got my little Chinese tea bowl here to make the most of the tea. Cheers. So on the nose, there's these immediate kind of caramel aromas. And again, strong caramel notes on the palate, but also a slightly kind of darker cocoa edge, which is very pleasant, and you're getting quite a lot of Yunnan black tea, so that's really nice. Now I could sit here and drink this for the next 20 minutes, but I don't think you'll want to watch me do that. So I'm going to pour that one away as well, and the rest. And we're going to get on brewing steep number 2. So remember I said this is 100 degree water we started out with. Now I deliberately filled this kettle and it's still pretty full so that it would keep its heat as best it could really. Obviously we're getting a little bit colder now. Maybe down to 95 or 90, and so I might have to brew for just a little bit longer than I would have done otherwise, and so it's free and easy. You can adjust your parameters, basically trying to get the right flavour profile. So and colours are really good proxy to that. So let's pour this one out. So this time trying a bit more of a high pour. So I said before about why might you do a high pour? My wife just thinks it looks poncy, and maybe she's right. But two good reasons to do a high pour is that firstly you cool the tea down a little bit, and you don't want the tea to be so hot that it's burning your taste buds early on in your tea session. And secondly, when you boil water, you boil out all the air and the oxygen, and if you've ever drunk water that's been boiled, you'll know it's often a bit flat tasting, so we're trying to kind of add a bit of that kind of zip and kind of brightness to the water there. So so here we go, a bit more of a high pour for you kids at home. I'm going to discard the rest of that again. So one of the things about Gong Fu Brewing is that think of it like that kind of liquid chromatography. Do you remember that in science GCSE, or distillation, where different chemicals come off at different times in the process? That with loose leaf tea, whole leaf tea, then certain compounds can be more water soluble, come out much quicker, and some of them are going to take longer to and come out in later steeps. So you might get a flavour progression with the tea, and particularly that will be the case for some oolongs, particularly roasted oolongs, and many pu'er teas as well. So cheers, guys. So I brewed this a nice dark red colour, and that's kind of reflected in the palate really, that the cocoa's still there, but there's also more of a kind of a malty, slightly bready note that you often find in Yunnan teas, and that's very nice. Yum. There's actually like a slight floral note as well, really light floral note. So that's steep 2. Cheers, guys. And I will brew just one more for the sake of the video. You can't see at the moment, I'll try and show you in a minute, but the tea leaves that were these kind of very closely, tightly curled, very golden buds to start with have now kind of tripled in size, and they're dark brown and they've kind of unfurled. So this is tea that's well on the way in brewing well. Now I kind of used to think that because of the way tea bags work, that once your tea leaves had rehydrated, then actually they'd lost all their flavour and it's ready to move on. But actually, the great thing about whole leaf tea is that's not the case, and that's probably been a good 15 seconds, hasn't it? So I'll finish that there. Actually, a whole leaf tea often performs better and gives out more of its flavour profile once it's rehydrated, and you kind of midway through your tea session. So here we go, steep number 3, and let me show you this really clear, fabulous, kind of rich red ruby coloured tea. So this is why Chinese actually call this style of tea red tea rather than black tea, because of the red colour of the liquor. So cheers. So the tea's moved on a bit. I'd say there's not as much sweetness to it on this third steep, but still those lovely malty notes. Let me just show you this really, so the contents of the gaiwan. Can you see how much bigger how much more the gaiwan's been filled up with the tea leaves there, as they've rehydrated. Oops. So that's probably about it for this video, really. I hope that's given you a bit of a flavour of Gong Fu Brewing at Kung Fu tea. And I'd encourage you to consider that when you've got a bit more time to spend with your fabulous loose leaf tea. I do have a few spare Gaiwans, as I showed in a previous video, so if a couple of people say, you know what, I'd be interested in borrowing one of those rather than splashing out 10, 12 quid on one online, then yeah, please give me a shout and I'll be happy to share those with you. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. Please let me know what you think and if you have a go with Gong Fu Brewing yourself. Cheers guys, until next time, bye bye.